Hello and welcome to the first webinar for Emergency Services Times in 2026. Happy New Year to everybody, even though it's a bit late in the month now to say that. I'm Catherine Levin and I'm the editor of Emergency Services Times. For the first time, we're having a Q&A special for our webinars, and we're going to get into the detail all about the Emergency Services Network. In our webinars, we ask our speakers to share their work, insights and thoughts on the future. So there won't be any presentation, it's just us having a conversation today. We've had questions in advance, so thank you very much to those of you who sent them to us. And we'll also be asking you to ask questions today using the question function on the side of your screen now, so do add them in. My only question to you is, could you please keep them short so that I can read them? Otherwise, it's very hard for me to process that and manage the webinar. Thank you. So you'll also receive CPD accreditation for attending the webinar today, and you'll get that by email from us quite soon after today if you're watching live, and on catch up will probably be at the end of the month. And our plan today is to run for 50 minutes in total. So let's get started. We'll be joined on screen by my panelists. There we go. So unusually today, we are in a slightly different format because Nigel and Thomas are joining us in the same room and Paul is in a separate room, and I'm very small, which is fine. So I'm delighted to introduce Nigel Smith, Tomas Vanderick and Paul Peck. Nigel is Delivery and Deployment Director for the Emergency Services Mobile Communications Programme based in the Home Office. Thomas is Delivery Director for ESN at BTEE, also in the Home Office. And Paul is ESN Lead at IBM. Welcome to you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, no, it's marvellous to have ESN back with us. We had you at the show. Nigel, you were on the stage with us. Thomas and Paul, your colleagues, joined us on the panel led by Niall Stoko. So we had that great session, which is now available as a podcast episode. So anybody watching this, if you're very keen, you could go and listen to that on the For Every Response podcast. We're 4 months on, but before we start to talk about ESN today, I'd just like Nigel, in terms of your experience at the show, having that panel, that experience, how was that for you?
So I think that was a great opportunity for us, obviously having restarted the program or certain elements of the program at the start of last year. It was a great chance for us to share where we got to with everyone. And from our perspective, most importantly, to allow people to ask questions. We feel now we've got a lot more to say about the program. There's some really positive news. And it was a really great opportunity to get people's points of views and questions so we can start sharing the message about what ESN is going to do and some of the challenges with that and the user communities.
Excellent, good. So the show is a great place to come and learn, but not everybody can come to the show. So we now have this webinar, which is fantastic to bring you together to tell us all about where you are today in 2026. So, but before we start talking about the detail, I wonder, Nigel, could you give us an elevator pitch for ESN and tell us what the problem it is it's trying to solve for the emergency services?
Sure, of course. I'll try and be brief. It's a very complicated solution. But as everyone knows, Airwave has been used for emergency communications now for a good 25 years. It is a tried, trusted, safe and secure system, resilient and robust. Everyone has got used to that system. Unfortunately, like most systems of that kind of age, it's starting to get harder and harder to support the system, to find the hardware and technology to keep the system running. People are probably aware a lot of other countries are now moving towards a 4G solution based around commercial networks. ESN is essentially going to do that for the UK. So for England, Wales and Scotland, for all three emergency services, nationals and sharers. And it will enable a fast, safe, secure voice, video and data running initially across 4G. And then in the future roadmap moving to 5G, giving there's immediate access to life-saving data, images, information on live situations and emergencies on the front line. Clearly, the starting point for us is to get to airwave equivalence. We've got to get to a point where we can replicate a safe and secure service, and we're very passionate about doing that, and then expand that service out from there to give a more robust and additional feature-rich solution set. And if I may just build on that just very quickly, last year, just so people are aware, we've been running coverage. We continue to extend coverage, and we're taking now additional calls, several hundred additional calls per month. for 999 through that the new elements of the service. We're expanding the in-building coverage. We're looking at power resilience. We mobilise the programme. We've got our first high-level design complete, and we've got our first set of environments built through the 2 data centres we put together. We've done some demonstrations now, proof of concept demonstrations of MCX communications, which we showcase at Babcase, and we've got a coverage portal demonstration, which we also showcase at Babco, and that we can talk about in a little bit more detail later on.
Right. Now, Nigel, that was a very, very long elevator pitch. We've gone to the top of the Shard and back, I think, which is absolutely fine. But you've given us lots and lots of things there. So let's find out from Tomas and Paul about, as the suppliers, you were very keen at the show to talk about the partnership, which is why we have you with your two key suppliers here. So I wonder if Tomas and Paul, you can talk about what that's like being part of this partnership and what it's been like working in the Home Office on this programme so far. Perhaps I'll start with you, Paul, and come to you, Tomas, afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having us on the show. It's an absolute privilege to be able to be here and talk to this massive community about such an important program. So Paul Peck, I'm the delivery lead for what we call user services on the ESM program. So I'm from IBM and part of our complex delivery practice, but user services is a true ecosystem of partners, and we'll go on to a little bit more about those in a minute. But it's been a real privilege to get stuck in this last year and working closely with Tomas and the mobile services team, as well as all of our colleagues in the Home Office. I think first and foremost, this is a huge program. There's an awful lot that we need to do, not just across our respective areas and working with our Home Office colleagues and Nigel's team, but working with the user community. And first and foremost, what we've had to do is sort of from scratch build some really strong collaborative and open relationships across all the teams. That has very quickly kind of built and borne fruit throughout the last year, and it's allowed us to have really, really constructive conversations. This is going to be a big program. It is going to have challenges at times, and being able to openly talk about those and then come up with constructive ways to resolve those challenges has set us a fantastic foundation for us to progress over the next couple of years towards our delivery targets of delivering ESN and shutting Airwave down safely.
Yes.
It is an incredibly important program, and obviously we all have this massively shared goal of delivering this program safely because it is so impactful and it is so meaningful for our user community. And I think that sense of unified purpose has allowed us to really, really build those relationships quickly and get them established. So yes. I think first, for myself, speaking on behalf of the user services team, it's just a massive sense of pride to be part of this program and to start working.
It's so nice to hear your passion, Paul, the way you talk about it, the way you talk about users and relationships. This is a really positive thing. Now, Tomas, let's hear from you. What's it like for the BTEE point of view?
Yeah, I of course cannot do better than Paul, but to be fair, and I'm not going to repeat Paul's point because I actually kind of fully agree with a lot of the points he makes. But for me, the partnership has a lot to do around, first of all, recognizing the value that each individual partner brings in this partnership. And I think that in this case, the setup that we currently have, that's quite clear. This distinct role that the authority plays, the distinct role that user services with their ecosystem plays, and what we do from a BT perspective in ultimately the radio access network and the mobile core. And secondly, look, and I do want to reiterate, it is that the fact that we have a common purpose, which makes it so meaningful to also very quickly overcome some of those collaboration issues you typically see in big programs. If you think over the past 12 months, mobilization and getting to work together, it's a relatively short period of time, and we're actually established to be in a point where delivery and integration is now really going to happen. And from that perspective, I'm also very proud to be part of it, and the entire BTE team is.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let's move on to timetable then. So what are we looking at in terms of key deadlines? So let's work backwards. When do you expect it all to be finished? And what are the key touch points to get us there? So Nigel, perhaps just headlines, and we will be keeping you to them. So what they are, please.
Understood. So look, we've always said target Airwave shutdown is end of 2029. Right, and that's something we're planning around with the deployment planning, working with our user community at the moment. Our current plans, which we have baselined, take us to the first key milestone, which is full voice service ready, at the end of Q1 2028. And at that point, we will be ready to complete any final operational testing with users and start the rollout to the wider community, start the implementation and transition.
Okay, all right. So Q1 2028, so 2 years. Between now and then, what can our audience expect to see from you if that's where the rollout happens? Are there any other things that you'll be able to, will be visible to people?
Of course, so we've already started doing some of the demonstrations that I've shared around MCX. The intention now is to bring in small groups of the user community to start working with the test team, have a look at what we've been doing through the RAN field testing, and we're going to expand that through early MCX testing. And we have an embedded group of senior users and technical support community and planners at the moment that are constantly working with the program and engaging with their wider communities to share knowledge on what's going on. So at the end of this year, we're aiming to get to initial data as a first milestone, technically ready for initial data. And then towards the end of 2027, we'll start to think about pilots and looking towards what we might do for rollout. From a user perspective, reasonably same position this year in terms of engagement with the senior users and support communities, some planning work. Q1 next year is when we'd like to get the wider community much more engaged with what we're going to be doing and looking at how we transition and deploy.
Okay, and presumably you've got a communication engagement program to kind of support that so that all of the wider community are seeing what you're doing and have opportunities to get involved.
That's correct, and we're working through the leadership communities across each of the emergency services and have separate forums with the suppliers, nationals and sharers, etc., to try and keep people as engaged and aware with what we're doing as possible.
Brilliant. And in terms of, so you mentioned suppliers there, so we've got IBM, BT here today, who are your big partners, I suppose. In terms of the other partners, suppliers in the ecosystem, who are we looking at? Who else is involved? Paul, could you run us through the list?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of the user services ecosystem, we've brought together some delivery leaders in their fields across multiple different areas. So just to touch on a few, we brought in Samsung, who is our MCX provider. They have a proven MCX product, which gives us that mission critical communications, which is actually being used in mission critical scenarios live in other parts of the world. We've got our Ericsson colleagues who are part of the low mobile core integration. So we're working very, very closely with our Ericsson partners alongside Tomas's team to get that integration with the live network, with the BTE network. We've also brought in partners around so Exponential E, who have got really, really strong working relationship with the Crown hosting and delivering the infrastructure and the services that we've delivered over the last 12 months. Some of the environments of which that demonstration Nigel alluded to was performed. So that was on a usable ESN environment. So not the test instance, obviously, not the final product, but that is already established. And we've got a number of other partners as well. I won't cover all of them. We'll run out of time very quickly. But each and every one of them shares that passionate mindset and that common goal. And I think crucially, how we brought it together, this isn't IBM as just the systems integrator fronting this. We are standing shoulder to shoulder with these partners to deliver these solutions, as well as our colleagues in BTE. And we go about that as a mantra day in, day out. And we are working together to deliver to those targets that Nigel's talked about.
Okay, all right. That's good to know there's plenty of suppliers there and you've got this kind of way of all working together. Let's go to the questions that we got in advance of the webinar now. It's just which is around who gets it. So currently we have people who are using Airwave and at ESN. Is it the same people who are using Airwave today that will have ESN? Are you adding anybody else to it? And if you want to start with, in the future, would they be added? And we have this from Paul Denning from Swaledale Mountain Rescue Team, who asks about whether the voluntary sector, for example, will get access. And the Hayden Kelleher from the North East London Ambulance NHS Foundation Trust also asks if the NHS Beyond Ambulance would get access. So real interest there in kind of who's getting it and who might get it. So perhaps Nigel, I'll come to you for that.
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, the intention is to go to start with Airwave equivalents. So we will be rolling out the existing 3 emergency services and nationals and sharers, volunteer organisations, you can say. So, for example, if you take the Coast Guard, the RNLI will be engaged in that process. Borders and controls, etc., will be engaged in that process. So we're starting with the same community as our point of origin, if you like.
Okay, thank you. So I want to talk to you about delivery risk now. So we've talked about the timetable. We now know it's the same people who are going to get it, who have it now will have the new version in the future. In terms of the risks of delivering, the complexity of this program, it is a big program, and people will want to know, do we know it's going to work? So in terms of the risks, I will just point in terms of specific risks. The question here that's been voted 4 times so far talks about resilience options, and it talks about the major power outages that have happened elsewhere, about power supply resilience. Now that in itself is a risk. So I wonder if we could talk broadly about what the main delivery risks are and then specifically address that point there, please, for me. Who's best to answer that one?
So I'll probably pick that up, and then if others want to come in, we can kick that around.
Sure.
So,
okay.
Just as a general point in terms of risk, like most programs fail when you mobilize them. That's one of the key points of failure. We're way past that. You know, we've got through design, we've started building things, we started demonstrating them. So all of those are good things. Some of the key challenges for us at the moment, probably 2 to focus on: concluding the procurements, in particular around control room interfaces, and devices, and the wide area network. They're the 3 outstanding ones that we're working on. And obviously interfaces into the system are always a concern on any solution, in this case, particularly complicated. So that's something we're paying very close attention to. In terms of kind of resilience and power resilience, probably Tomas is best placed to answer that.
Yeah, I think from a resilience perspective, and it kind of leads on to what Nigel is talking about, we've been actually identifying as part of the program, Catherine, based on indeed the question, what happens if there is a national power outage and how do you deal with it? There is a roadmap that's been built to look at what do we now actually need to be able to actually the emergency communication to continue to, if that happens, and with the whole focus on that resilience needs to be there from a power perspective for 5 consecutive days. So it's quite extensive. And that has led to identifying 2,000 locations, meaning must locations where we actually are currently starting to deploy. And we're expecting to do the first 250 of 2,000 sites by the end of March, where we're actually deploying power generators or batteries, depending on where the location is, but specifically to really create that core network across the nation that will also work with complete blackouts. That doesn't mean, of course, that coverage will always be there when there is a power outage, but this will allow us actually to have a scenario and a use case where we can actually, as part of helping and educating the users how to use the network in mission critical circumstances, to always have options to connect. And that's kind of a key focus of the program, and something we are very keen to have delivered by the middle of 28, which is not too far from now.
Okay, and then so it was around national. Sorry, Nigel. I'm just going in terms of the question being about national outage. If there are regional or local ones, would there be a kind of flip over to other areas? Does that?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we are actually doing, and it's based, for example, on the storms we had earlier this year in Scotland. What we try to map out, and we try to do always kind of lessons learned on the back of it to try to understand. Yeah, but what does now a storm outage and the damage that's been done mainly on electrical infrastructures, to be fair? How do you actually deal with these type of things? And does actually the current resilience help and solve us? That's a continuous learning that we are doing. And we are, from that perspective, flexible in adapting the plan to make sure that we also take those type of use cases into account.
And can I just add a little bit on back of that as well, Catherine? So, I mean, we've built in resiliency into the design of the solution. So we've got multiple data centers geographically separated around the country to protect against that. And on the point of the broader delivery risks as well, part of the program that we've built and the structure around how we do it, Nigel's already touched on, we're delivering our initial data product this year. We're incrementally building up the solution between now and early 2028. And at each one of those stages, that's done deliberately so that we can test early, we can, and all of that testing includes the resiliency, not just the functional side, but the performance and the operational aspects of it as well. And we are incrementally doing that throughout this year into 2027 and ready for 2028. So that resiliency and reducing risk on the long-term delivery program is inherently built into how we structured the delivery of the program, not just across user services, mobile services, and all the partners as well. And we keep revisiting that with the idea of we identify any problems or challenges very early. The earlier we identify them, the quicker we can fix them, the less impactful they'll be, and de-risks the program as we progress and go down the line.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. And in terms of that risk, and just to finish off this point, one of the questions here is about what happens if satellite gets turned off. So it's not just a power outage; it's satellites. And this questioner, Martin Hunt, asks in time of war, but just the general point about satellites. Can any of you respond on that side of things for me?
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. Currently in the setup and design of the solution, and I'm not predicting what the future will bring, but if you currently look at it, we use satellite mainly for backup purposes. And secondly, we are trying to diversify from satellite provider perspective to make sure that you're not relying on only one supplier, because if they kind of switch off, take out one, you want to at least have some options there. And there are some use cases where we use it as main connection, but there we are actually in the planning to also kind of making sure that we diversify there. If there is and that's a future roadmap type of discussion, of course, is if you go to 5G, where actually direct communication between device and satellite also becomes an option as kind of a roadmap, then we need to, of course, start building plans there as well. But currently in the core ESN network that we will deliver, it's mainly driven for backup purposes and then being diversified from a supplier perspective.
Okay, all right. I think that's really useful. So understanding what it looks like in terms of the overall risks, the power, in terms of local, regional, and then that satellite aspect to it. So that's really helpful. Thank you for that. So in terms of delivery, what it is people are going to get, we have a question here about handhelds. So Nigel, could you help us understand? At the moment, airwave radio, my understanding is that it's held, say for example, if you're a fire officer, an officer on the scene, like a commander, will have an airwave radio. So the ESN of the future, will those radios still be there? And when this question talks about handhelds, do you think they're talking about the airwave radio, or are they talking about something else?
In terms of ESM, we'll be using devices that work on full 5G. So they will be both a combination of handheld devices, rugged devices, fixed vehicle devices, as fire would have now, police have, ambulance, etc. So individuals will have both access to the fixed vehicle device and a type of handheld device, depending on the role that they're looking at. As I mentioned earlier, we're going through procurements at the moment, looking at all of the requirements set out by our user groups for all of the different types of handheld devices they will have. And if people want to reference devices that are very similar to what we will be providing, I think the Met Police are already using a type of device on Tetra that will look very similar to something that we will be using on ESN, albeit maybe not with the same supplier. That depends how the procurement goes. But we'll end up with both fixed vehicle and handheld devices.
Right. And then somebody else here asks, what are the ESN devices like to look like? You'd covered that a little bit, but there's talk of smartphone type devices as opposed to radios. So I talked about airwave radio just now, but will they look like the smartphone that I have, for example? Will it just be full of apps?
Not quite. No? Not quite. There are some that will look a little bit more like a smartphone and have more access to that. Probably Tomas can answer better than I can on that front.
I think from a device perspective, look, and it comes back to the airwave equivalence. So the first focus on making sure that the functionality from what they currently use on airwave is actually replicated on ESN, so that the transition moves very smoothly. I think from a device perspective that there is an evolution going to happen on the back of transitioning to airwave. I'm pretty confident, but it will not be your regular smartphone to start with. I don't think that's very realistic or the right thing to do.
Okay. And in terms of what people will be able to do with these devices. So if you've got the physical device, but the actual activities that are taking place, will that be different to what they're used for now? I know, Nigel, in the past, I've heard this phrase, the bigger pipe allows more things to go down the pipe. Could you help us understand what it means in terms of the capability and what that means for officers on the front line who are using these devices? Will they be able to do new and different things as a result of this?
I'll probably start with the devices and then hand over to Paul to talk about the bigger pipes. So the devices will do essentially the same thing that emergency users can do now. So they will be able to make calls, they will be able to do group calls, there will be an emergency button as there is now. All of those things will be the same going forwards. There will be future options to look at doing video calls. We will be providing location information for control rooms so people can find individual users on the ground, and we'll be moving to 5G over time. The bigger pipe is about how much communication volume transactions we can deal with across the system. Paul, I don't know if you want to pick up on what we did in that space with the lease lines and why we went for slightly bigger pipes.
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of a combination between myself and Tomas, but effectively, if you think about the airwave system, that's been purpose-built for the emergency services network. But if you're talking about the number of first responders and people using that, we're talking hundreds of thousands. Whereas we're switching over to a network that is purpose-built for everyone in the public domain to use, which is millions of people. So the capacity there is already a lot higher. We've built purpose-built infrastructure in the data centers and with our systems so that it can handle a higher flow. As Nigel says, part of the features that will come with ESN will be things like video call. So at the BAPCO demonstration last year, we did do a live demonstration where you could see a video chat. Obviously, you can't do that with just a standard airwave handheld radio. Inevitably, when you're sending data through the pipeline, you are going to need more bandwidth. You are going to need more capacity to handle that versus a standard voice call. So all of those things are being built and baked into the system as we go. And then back to that point I made before about the incremental build-up, we've referred to initial data coming later this year. That's the first part for us to showcase some of those features coming through. And then we build features on top of that as we go throughout 2027, ready for early 2028. But the crucial first step is we need to get the equivalency to, as Thomas mentioned before, with the airwave system so that we can shut down that network and transition all of the user community safely. And that is first and foremost the priority, making sure we can do that safely and response can rely on the network as it is and make sure that they get the connectivity when they need it. And then we'll build on top of that with any additional features beyond what currently is available on airwave in the future.
Okay, Tomas, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, maybe to add, and I think I fully agree with what Paul says, but besides the fact that you have big pipes in the core, the fact that your radio access network is actually based on 4G and in the roadmap, of course, also 5G as technology means that you have high capacity available, and that means that when there is an incident happening in a congested area, for example, that the ability to prioritize mission critical communication will be just much easier to do compared to a current airwave environment. And that's, to be honest, also what we actually see in testing environments, which we have been doing over the past 12 months. So from that perspective, it's going to be quite a leap change. And on top of the fact that you have 5G in the roadmap, that will also in the future allow 3D type of localization capabilities, direct satellite type of communication. So from that perspective, it opens up so much more opportunity for reliability of the network.
Yeah. Has there been any consideration within the program about overload of information? If there's so much capability and capacity to send information back and forth in terms of officers and how they're able to deal with all of that, is there anything in that sort of the softer side of things within your program? Maybe Nigel.
Sorry.
I'm looking.
Go first.
So the hard question, the answer is yes, right? So we're looking at data use, who owns data. The idea of the system is that it's obviously passing information through. The users will ultimately own the data. We've created the solution so that it's scalable. I'm not saying future-proof, but it will give us capacity for quite a long way into the future, right? The comparative to the number of communications we're doing now, we will be putting through testing, as we will for video and data transmission, to make sure that we are scaling and performance testing to meet the user's needs and understand the capacity of the system in the future. So these are some of the things that we'll find out as we come into 2027 and we get into testing proper once the whole solution is built.
Okay, so we'll talk about testing in a moment. Just to finish off the sort of coverage side of our conversation, there's a couple of questions here. There was one about how is indoor coverage going to be guaranteed, from James Bushell. Who wants to take that? Indoor coverage.
Look, the question is, of course, what does guaranteed mean? So from a coverage perspective, there has, first of all, been an enormous focus from the program perspective and the build on outdoor coverage, where we actually, by the end of March, we actually will have delivered the full outdoor coverage requirements. There is still some build for air coverage that happens afterwards. From an indoor coverage perspective, we actually started a lot of the design work and implementation and survey work actually has been done based on the requirements set out by the users for indoor enhancement, because in general it's not that you need to foresee full indoor everywhere. It's kind of enhancing the coverage indoor, and we are starting to build and deploy the indoor coverage in the course of this year. And one of the things we, of course, and that's it's not written in stone yet, is kind of how do we now build that assurance model to make sure that from an indoor coverage perspective, first of all, at the start we have what the users expect it to be, but also have a methodology to continuously being able to show as part of the coverage portal, for example, also have a live view on where indoor coverage is available and what the assurance is that comes with it, because it depends a little bit on the situation. If you have a fully managed type of indoor coverage solution, or you have a more kind of a repeater environment. So it's not a black and white answer, and I don't think it should be a black and white answer, as long as we understand how the network will help the user to use it for mission critical communication, and that depends on the use case.
Yeah, probably just to add to that, we work with the users on the critical operational locations, and we have a process where we survey each location, put a design together, put the build in, and that's then picked up through Coverage Portal. And we have a number of different solutions for in-building coverage that we're looking at, various different commercial devices, boosters, and we're looking at MCX over Wi-Fi type solutions as well. So a combination of all of those things should give us the coverage needs that the users want.
Okay,
and course, that's one of the main drivers for. Sorry, Catherine, I was going to say that's also one of the main drivers for us looking to move towards 5G as well, because it gives us that better coverage and better penetration.
Just made me think about Grenfell, actually, when you were talking there about coverage of radios within tall buildings, particularly ones over 11, 18 meters. In terms of what you were talking about there, is there special consideration for high-rise residential buildings, for instance?
That high-rise residential buildings have not been specified as such. The only thing is, of course, we are doing quite a lot of build for air, which also gives us actually at least a network capability which goes up to 10,000 feet in the air, which means that there is a national coverage from that perspective. So there is definitely a use case to make sure that we also cover that part of the network.
Okay. All right. And then there's the coverage question here, which has been upvoted 5 times from Roy Stammers. It says, how will 3ES, now I'm assuming that means the 3 emergency services, but I may be wrong, be assured that coverage is where it is required, please? So I think we may have made these points already, but in terms of assurance about coverage broadly across the country, from the very tops of Scotland to the very bottom of Cornwall, what assurance can we offer in terms of that?
Let me start with a few points. So we're building on top of the largest commercial network in the UK. All right, so there is already coverage there. To that, we are adding through extended area services and rural services additional coverage to enhance that network. What we are doing with the user community and what we're trying to share at the moment is a number of things. The coverage portal will show the existing coverage from that commercial network. So you'll be able to go and have a look, and the level of detail and resolution on that is very good indeed. So once that comes out now in August, that will be available for users to have a look at. As I say, we're already going out and testing through the round field testing early MCX with user communities in high density areas at key events, remotely out in Scotland through high speed driving events. We've done a number of different things, including air testing, to demonstrate that the coverage is available when we need it. Are we going to map exactly to the coverage that you have with Airwave? No, we're not. Are there going to be some knock spots? Yes, there will. There will probably be slightly different ones. Our commitment is to give the users the coverage that they need as far as we can within the program, but there are always going to be some gaps, and I know the operational work hours that the users currently have to deal with some of those at the moment. So we'll work with the user community to support them as far as we can with that.
Yeah, I think Catherine, to add on the coverage intelligence portal, the whole intent of it, and the first release is out there, and so that the whole intent is actually to give real-time data on where coverage is available. It will give the status of the location's availability. That means that if a mast is down, it will be very clear in the portal. The next release will include the indoor view. It will start including the views from a resilience perspective. And the whole intent is that we actually give the users a tool to be able to operationally plan, to do scenario planning, so that in case you have a black spot, for example, that for every use case it's understood, but how do we then still have coverage available in those use cases for mission critical communication? Because if you talk about airwave equivalence, it's not about mapping the coverage from airwave on ESN, but it's actually making sure that ESN delivers coverage when mission critical communication is needed. And that's where the whole focus sits, and that includes all the temporary solutions we have. So from that perspective, coverage is a very, very large topic, and not purely looking at a national footprint, if that makes sense.
Okay, no, understood. Somebody's asking here about air cells for aircraft and helicopters going live at the same time as ground infrastructure. You talked about 10,000 feet up in the air, so presumably that's for aircraft. So what's the answer to that? I'm afraid I'm not sure I understand more than what the question's asking there around what's required. Who's best to answer that?
Just in terms of timelines, let me start that. So in terms of the first device will become available Q1 this year. So we're looking to get Tetra replacements available, working with the MPAS teams on that, because I know they've got a fleet replacement, and we're closely integrated into that team. What that will then do, it'll give us some resilience for air, in as much as we'll have a device that will support them. Some of the devices are now aging, and then we'll bring interworking into line. So as we start the rollout to the user community, we will probably be working with the new Tetra device for air and using interworking to communicate to ESN. And then as the ESN device becomes available through transition, we will start to roll out that device to the air fleet.
Yeah, okay. From a network perspective, so we are actually currently fully built of the cells and the masts, which are specifically for the air communication, which will be a dedicated network for ESN. So that's not used for commercial use. And we expect to finalize actually that coverage piece from an air perspective by somewhere at the end of 27. So from that perspective, we will be well ahead, ready to start testing when the devices which will be deployed in the aircrafts will be ready.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, we had NPAS at the show, at the Emergency Services Show, and they showed their new drone. Would the drone be included in that? In terms of the capability?
Testing with devices on drones.
Is it the uncrewed aircraft?
Yeah, I
think that's yes.
No, not as an airwave equivalent. No, that will be something we will bring in later on. All I'm saying is we're using drones for testing air at the moment with some of the current test devices.
Okay, all right. So lots of stuff about coverage. I think we've done that quite well. I'd really like to just, because I'm just conscious of our time, understand how your testing has been working, and particularly this idea of the large-scale events. Imagine that all those people on the Thames at New Year's Eve, all with their phones, and if you needed to have lots of airwave radios if something happened, if there was incidents. Could you give us a sense from maybe New Year's as an example about how you will make sure that it can work when there's so much connectivity going on in an instance? So Tomas, perhaps could you take us through how you're doing your testing and how you're reassuring yourselves that this will work when there's so many people involved?
Yeah, and I will talk about it, but I can tell you it's not a BTE only activity. It's actually a very joined up activity because it's so fundamental actually as part of delivering ESN is actually continuously trying to create the proof points that actually it does what we expect it to do. So we have actually this Renfield testing. We did 2 phases. We did the first phase in the first half of the year, and now the second phase to kind of reconfirm the learnings from the first phase in the second part of the year, where we did 11 events, which the last one was on New Year's Eve in London, indeed, where we actually with 320 devices, actually during a high density and a kind of a high loaded network, started testing all the functionality that we require from an ESN perspective, and that starts actually with the fact that we chose to use unicast as a methodology for communication, actually testing does it actually fit within the network and does it work, and then mainly focus on voice quality, accessibility of the network, retain performance once you're on the network, these type of things to really test in combination with preempt and prioritization capabilities, which are so important for mission critical situations. And from that perspective, the learnings are that actually it has been consistently delivering against all those requirements, with users being involved in those tests, and actually also quite positive if you look at New Year's Eve. And if you now kind of look into 26, what does testing now move us towards? Is actually with early MCX coming available, the integration between the core starting to happen. That means that in 26, our focus will be to do similar type of testings, but with a much closer to the end state type of architecture from a core perspective, from a devices perspective, from an apps perspective, so that that we actually kind of reconfirm everything once the end-to-end components are there, because it's called Renfield testing, but ultimately it's testing all the components which are coming together. And one of the key events, for example, we have now scheduled for in 26 is Notting Hill Carnival, which has very specific metrics, because you have a lot of people who are moving around, where at New Year's Eve people are very static in one location. So we actually try to create as many possible scenarios to actually really learn and continuously improve the quality of the network. But the results are quite positive, and gives us really, before we actually start deploying, kind of almost the assurance that the network is doing what we expect it to do. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Can I add to that as well?
Yeah, please do.
I was just going to say, so all that fantastic testing that Tomas and the team have been leading on has been demonstrating some real confidence in the solution. And I think this is part of, we talked before about some of the risks over the years to come. All of this is helping to reduce risk as we go forward. And we're doing other things as well. As we go through 2026, we're now starting to do all of the core integration between the user services and the network teams, making sure that's all stood up. We are incrementally building up the solution, not just in terms of building as major product releases, but we do that and echo that as a standard approach throughout the entire program delivery model. So we incrementally increase our testing. We start by doing what we call early integration testing with just a small subset of the components to prove those key interactions, as Nigel referred to them earlier, fit together. And then that builds into full end-to-end functional and performance testing all the way through user services, mobile services, and the other partners across the program, so that we're proving this solution end to end. And all of that is testing early, incrementally building it up. So I like to use the analogy that you don't start when you're building a house, building all the wiring and testing the lights before you've even put the roof on the building, right? So we're doing that core and then incrementally building it up. That will inevitably help reduce risk as we move forward, but it also, and I think just as crucially, it builds that confidence, not just for us as a program, but for our user community and the user representatives that are involved in this testing, which they will be and are planned to be and have been to date as well. So over 2026 and 2027, while we're doing this integrated testing, we will have our user community representatives engaged as part of that testing. So we're doing it together, shoulder to shoulder, not the program is doing this and then delivering it to the users. We're doing it with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think user confidence is absolutely critical in terms of what you're talking about here. I'm just conscious that we're coming towards the end of our time. I just want to pick up a couple of smaller questions that we've had. One is around ESMCPs being available for emergency services suppliers to integrate their products into ESN. Nigel, is that something you can pick up on quickly for us?
So obviously our devices and the SIMs will be essentially issued from ESN. So there will be SIMs, so they will be available to people who've got certified devices. There is a subscription charge, obviously for the SIMs. Don't know what that will be yet, and there will be a charge for the devices. Again, we don't know what that will be yet, but we'll share that as soon as we have the information.
And that charging you're talking about the individual services having to pay for these devices.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And then so the question that links to that is somebody has asked here. Ewan Richards asked, are there any plans for airwave radios to be traded in or bought back to reduce the costs for the swap over? So, if you give one, you get the other, you get the new one half price. So how does it work?
Completely different providers would be a monumentally complicated solution. Unfortunately, it's not something we're able to do.
So what will happen to all the old devices?
They'll have to be returned to the user or destroyed as normal. Normally, if the devices are end of life, they are destroyed in a fixed, secure manner.
Okay, so just treat them in the sense of any equipment which is being traded in for something else. Yeah. Nothing special with the program.
No.
Okay, excellent. All right. So it is 14:46. We've been going for 46 minutes. So which has been great. And I think we've done a lot of coverage. We know we've gone right through from, what's it all about to the timetable, which we've been very clear on that you must be done by the end of 2029. Can I ask what happens if it slips?
Sorry, can you rephrase the question, Catherine?
So if you don't manage to achieve the full delivery by the end of 2029, is there, in terms of thinking about your risk?
It's in relation to keeping airwave operational and running. So it's our intention to support the emergency services. And if airwave needs to continue to run support those services while we do the transition, that will happen. As I've said, our target to close down airwave is the end of 2029. That remains the case. And we're having a look at the moment of the deployment plans and how we'll do that national transition. Once we have all of that information, we will share that and any changes to dates that might be associated with that. But right now, we're targeting the end of 2029.
Okay, understood. So we talked a lot about coverage, about confidence and testing. The testing sounds really interesting, the way that you're doing that, particularly in those large-scale environments like New Year's and Notting Hill in August of this year. We'll be fascinated to see what you learn from that, and the sense of partnership and passion that you all bring. So it's been really interesting hearing you all talk about this really important project for the emergency services. To finish us off, and unfortunately I'm not going to be able to come to any more questions, so thank you to all our viewers for sending in so many of them. It has been an awful lot. Is to ask you one piece of advice that you would give our viewers today. So if you wanted them to go away and have a chat with somebody over Teams or in the coffee room or wherever they are, what would that be? So Nigel, what would you like people to go and talk about when it comes to thinking about ESN?
So one of the things we're really quite passionate about is having user engagement. Get engaged with the program, ask questions, find out what's going on, talk to your senior users, make sure you're aware of what's going on and you know the timetable and you know what's coming. It's really important we work with you to get the right solution for you.
Okay, and Tomas.
Yeah, for me, it elaborates a bit on the airwave equivalence. My big ask for anybody on the call is embrace the ESN network from a perspective that let's make sure that the coverage is there and the network works when mission critical communication is there, and that requires us all to work together and to try to understand how the network will work. Because if we all adopt the network, then I'm pretty sure that it will deliver fantastic opportunities for emergency service for the future.
Thank you. Paul?
I'm going to just round it out by saying get excited because we are delivering ESN. We're demonstrating capability and features already. Hopefully those of you that were at PAPCO saw that demonstration of the MCX system working on the ESN services. Throughout this year, we're going to integrate the solution and start getting those products available and out. So get excited because we are going to deliver ESN so we can transition all the users and shut down airwave safely. You've probably heard John Black say that a number of times, but it is an ethos we all share. So I'd like to ask everyone to share in that ethos with us as we deliver ESN.
Fantastic. What great final points for our viewers today. The one point, user engagement, Nigel, is there a standard way in which someone can get in touch with somebody within their service? Say I'm in, I don't know, Nottinghamshire Fire Service. There is somebody in that service who is the link point for ESN that could do that as you're wanting to improve the user engagement? How does it work?
There is a senior user and team that supports each of the emergency services. So they should reach out to them to get information on that. That's the right point to contact.
And that team within ESN rather than within their own service, you mean?
Well, they're from the services, so those people are aligned to the program. They're working with us. They're dedicated to the program. They do both the wider communications back to their service and through the service management chain. So I'm sure if people want us to, we can provide a list of names and contacts if they don't already have them.
Excellent, thank you. And then Thomas, you talked about embracing the network, which I like the idea of that, and Paul, get excited. So excited. Maybe the E should be changed from emergency to excited of ESN. That is fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us today and being part of our Emergency Services Times webinars. It's really useful to bring your great knowledge to our viewers and to share that. We'll hopefully have you back at the show, some combination of the three of you or others from the team to talk in September about where you are in your programme, because obviously things are happening so quickly that I'm sure we'll have plenty of new things to say. So will you join us again at the show in September, Nigel and friends?
Be delighted, so of course.
Yeah, be absolutely privileged.
That would be brilliant. Thank you so much. In which case, that just leaves me to say thank you for joining me this afternoon. I'm going to do my exit speech now. So we will put you off into the wings and say goodbye to you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
Right. Oh, what a great conversation. Really good way to kick off the year with ESN, and learned lots and lots and lots there about the programme and the passion of the delivery of the partnership that we've just heard speaking to us. So really great to have them with us. Thank you for all your questions. There have been absolutely loads. I've tried to do them. Upvoting definitely works. So next time if you want to watch one of our webinars, then definitely upvote. It gets my attention. So thank you for those. And thank you for those who sent them in advance. We don't normally do that, but it's definitely the way to help us form our conversation as well. So when we come to next week, which will be our JESIP, 2 weeks time, we'll be doing JESIP. So JESIP Q&A. So start thinking about your questions you have for the national JESIP team, and we'll be advertising that soon. Any notes on the webinar will be available on the catch up, and you'll get your CPD accreditation soon, whether you're watching on catch up or whether you're just finishing watching me now. The JESIP session is 29th of January if you want to mark your calendars. And in the meantime, do visit our website, emergencyservicestimes.com, and sign up for our daily digest to stay up to date. There is, as usual, loads going on in the sector. So it just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching.